Friday, 29th of September 1995. Operation RTV31 to Peterborough is in full effect. The culmination of a 3-year campaign led by the Reverend Richard Payton of Railworld. RTV31, that's Research Test Vehicle 31, was Britain's tracked hovercraft, an ambitious 1970s research and development project that aimed to revolutionise high-speed guided land transport. The project was cancelled by a cautious government in February 1973, and the full-scale prototype Hovertrain was led away from its hangar in Erith, Cambridgeshire, to the Cranfield Institute of Technology, Bedford, in 1975. The Reverend Richard Payton founded Railworld as a registered charity in 1985, with its overarching purpose being to proclaim and promote rail transport in a global context for public benefit, the environment, and that of the railway industry. In 1992, a volunteer of the Nene Valley Railway discovered RTV31 languishing and decaying on a section of its concrete track, seemingly abandoned and forgotten. This was mentioned to Richard, and he recognised the vehicle as an important step globally in the development of the Maglev type train. He also stated such a unique and important project should be properly restored and preserved, and believed that displaying it at Railworld would allow the public to discover what was achieved. Richard immediately contacted Cranfield Institute and requested that Railworld be allowed to acquire the vehicle for their collection. Professor Fletcher, head of campus at Cranfield Institute, responded by offering RTV31 to Railworld on permanent loan, but with caveats that all associated setup and transport costs be met by Railworld, and the vehicle would be returnable in good order upon demand. There was a question of ownership hanging over the vehicle. Cranfield Institute maintained they were practically 100% certain they owned RTV31, but didn't have the documentation to prove it. But this wouldn't hinder the matter of relocation, and the Institute was only too happy to reclaim the land for their up-and-coming technology park, on which the vehicle currently occupied. The next 3 years saw Railworld, led by the Good Reverend, with bulldog-like determination, team up with former Tracked Hovercraft Limited, or THL employees, to fundraise and explore the logistics involved with relocating the 50-ton, 70-foot-long concrete track beam, complete with the almost as long 22-ton vehicle.
The telephone rang one night, and he said, Ted, if I wanted it over at Railworld, what would be needed? So I said to him, well, it's mounted on a track beam already, so it could be displayed as such. But I said, you're going to need a big lorry to bring it over. I said, because you've got a 50-ton track beam with probably 15 tons left. The vehicle ran at 22 tons all up. I said, I'm guessing, but you've probably got 15 ton of vehicle on top of that. So there's 65 tons for a start. I said, you've got to cart that over, get that into Peterborough, through the Peterborough city centre. So there's the logistics of that part of it.
A notable event during fundraising was the well-attended THL staff reunion, held at the Gonville Hotel, Cambridge, in October 1993. This was to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Hovertrain project's cancellation. Richard Payton was also in attendance, and it was during this reunion that the proposal for displaying RTV31 at Railworld was floated, and met with approval.
I went along to it because I really wanted to see some of the people we worked with. And then there was a reverend, somebody other, who was sort of driving it and basically said, well, it's at Cranfield at the moment, it's there, and there is an idea to take it to Railworld, but it's going to cost, I think, around about £4,000, seems to, and we need funds to sort of do this.
There was also a surge of public interest following an article in the Daily Express on the 3rd of March 1994. The article looked at Germany's Transrapid vehicle of the time and cited that it was based on a British invention from the 1960s, the tracked hovercraft. Finally, vindication for the Hovertrain after it had been branded a failure for the last 20 years. This revelation catapulted RTV31 back into the public view. The nation's newfound appreciation for Britain's Hovertrain coincided with Railworld's preservation efforts. Further funding and support soon followed. By November 1994, Railworld had raised the £5,000 required to initiate the process of bringing RTV31 to Peterborough. Railworld hoped to perform the move early in 1995, But by August that year, the move still hadn't happened, prompting a letter from Cranfield Institute reminding Richard that RTV31 should be moved before the end of September because development of their technology park was progressing. Friday, 29th of September 1995, RTV31 arrives in Peterborough under police escort. The move was successful but didn't go entirely without a hitch. The most problematic part of the journey came in the last 300 metres, getting the lorry's enormous payload into the Railworld site itself. At one point, the Reverend, possibly summoning guidance from a higher power, took sledgehammer in hand to smite down an obstructing brick wall. Later that night, RTV31 was finally brought into the grounds of Railworld. The crews and volunteers retired for the night before returning the next morning.
It was a big job, and I remember it arrived. There used to be a Marshall's service station on our entrance, and we just could not get it round the corner. So. And that was late at night. I think it was like 11 o'clock on the Friday night. We knocked the wall down without asking anyone because we just could not get it round the corner. We had to replace it. We had to get bricklayers in and replace it. And then we come through Marshall's because the charity didn't own that land at the time. And the vehicle just stayed there with the guy all night. It was too late to put it up. The cranes went home and they came back at 6 o'clock in the morning. And started to sort it all out. We had 4 cranes from Stuart Smith, Peterborough Crane Hire, and it was real teamwork really, because we had 2 40 tons, I think, one end lifting the beam up, and another crane lifting the Hovertrain up. Oh, it was incredible really. And I mean, there's one particular photo of somebody on top of the Hovertrain, and I can't remember who it was. I think it was one of our volunteers.
By noon, the Hovertrain had been placed safely on its new supports, sat proudly, looking onto the East Coast main line. RTV31 was back home in the Fens. Then in June 1996, British Technology Group Limited, the successor organisation to the National Research Development Corporation, which had previously sponsored the development of RTV31 through its subsidiary Tracked Hovercraft Limited, confirmed in a letter that it asserts no claim to ownership of the vehicle. Therefore, Railworld now owned RTV31 unequivocally. On the 18th of September that year, an official opening ceremony was held. The Hovertrain and a commemorative plaque were unveiled by former managing director of THL, Tom Fellows.
We won international recognition. Worth remembering that it is what you do and not the way that you do it that really matters.
I went along to the official opening and I took my young son with me because I felt it was something important for him to understand. He was at school at the time, and when he was told his teachers what he's going to do, they said yes, because it's an important thing. So yes, I went along to the unveiling of the plaque and everything else. Somewhere I've got pictures of it, but.
Another noteworthy attendee was none other than Professor Eric Laithwaite, a pioneer in the development of a linear induction motor and fundamental to the Hovertrain's technical success.
Switch on!
Professor Laithwaite passed away just over a year later, on the 27th of November, 1997, at the age of 76. In September 2003, RTV31 underwent a much-needed spruce-up, a new paint job and decals.
The worst thing we did was to make it look like an actual vehicle. And the thing is, it was my fault, because I said to Richard, we want to make it look like what it wasn't. Let's paint it up so it looks more like what we thought it might be in the future. Richard paid another £4,000, whatever it was, to get it painted up with the blank windows in. But looking back now, people think that it actually was a machine like that. But the reality was, it wasn't a machine like that.
Beyond being jet washed every so often, no substantial work was undertaken on the Hovertrain thereafter. Time progressed. On the 22nd of July 2012, Reverend Richard Payton passed away at the age of 79. In 2021, Fenland on Film began developing a documentary about RTV31. The aim? To definitively tell for the first time the fascinating and yet seemingly unbelievable story that spans 5 decades. And Railworld has evolved into Railworld Wildlife Haven. RTV31 wasn't in the best condition at Cranfield in 1992. By now, it really was deteriorating badly, having been left open to the elements getting on for 50 years. Railworld Wildlife Haven's want was always to put a cover over the unique vehicle and get it restored. But funding such a project was difficult, especially in the face of their priorities having shifted towards environmental projects, educating people about climate change, creating habitats for nature, and a place of recreation. Sterling Maynard, a contractor with links to the original THL project in the 1970s and responsible for the installed supports on which RTV31 sits at Railworld, conducted a structural survey of the concrete track beam and deemed it to be life expired, therefore condemning it.
You tend to feel that concrete structures last forever, but they certainly don't, and they're worried about the integrity of the structure.
In 2022, it was revealed that plans were in the making to lower both the concrete track beam and the Hovertrain to be repositioned within the Railworld site to make access easier for preservation and restoration. The move was suggested to take place early in 2023 to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the Hovertrain project's cancellation, but it didn't happen.
RTV31, as it's known, is a local landmark at the Railworld Centre, but the concrete rail it sits on is in poor condition and the vehicle itself also needs repairs.
Well, they urgently have to find the funds to get it moved so they could assess its condition, or else it might have to be scrapped.
We know it's got to come down. We've said maybe 20, 30,000, but that 20, 30,000 could be the cost of getting it down and just doing a survey.
Based on its age, we don't know its structural integrity, so in order to get that down, we'd have to get that tested for the lifting points. If we're going to lift it with a beam, it's getting the weight right, it's space to get a machine in.
To be honest, it's just rotting away where it is, and it would be really nice to see that inside a purpose-made hangar of its own. It needs protection from the weather badly, because the rainwater is all getting inside it. The last time I saw it, some years ago, there were several holes that started to appear in the floor inside. Soon, it will just crumble into dust. I fairly frequently make a journey on the railway from Huntingdon to Peterborough, and as you come into Peterborough station, there it is, poor old dear, sitting there, slowly decaying all the time. I feel sad for it.
It was never meant to last. It was steel framed with aluminium panels. A recipe for disaster, a recipe for rust. We'd put this in a position where we could not maintain it. It's been a battle of little people, just mere volunteers trying to look after it. We would like to save it, but the plan is at the moment to take all the panels off, number them all, so we can put them back, have a look on the conditions as to whether a crane can lift it, getting them to look at it first, to see if they're prepared to lift it with their cranes. We've got to do something.
And now, in 2025, the crushing news that it's likely too late to save RTV31. The exterior panels are being stripped, removed for the first time in 50 years. This is to facilitate a structural assessment of the vehicle to determine if lifting it in one piece will be possible. If not, RTV31 will be cut up and scrapped.
When you get two dissimilar metals together and you get water, you get a massive amount of corrosion. I don't think there's any way they're going to lift that in one piece. The key thing to it is what Crowland cranes are prepared to lift. And this is the key thing to taking off these panels. The engineer from A1 Engineering will be the ones that kind of look at it from a structural point of view and work in conjunction with the people from Crowland Cranes. And once the two of those have made an assessment of what they think, then we'll take it from there.
The beam is condemned, properly condemned. Maynard's the people that built it in the first place. They've not only, looked at it in person, but looked at the structure of how it was built in the first place and said in the age it is and the condition it is, the beam can't be lifted. It's just going to have to be broken up in situ. There's 3 fan motors in there. One at the front which is in situ, 2 other ones that somebody tried to nick out of them but couldn't get them out. And they've used cutting gear because the fan motors are mounted onto the steel frames and they've cut through them. That's further weakened the structure of it. There's basically a bit of a room area at that side of it. There is a mystery thing. There's 2 pilot seats in there, fastened in part of the structure with seatbelts and World War II style vintage. Only if you crawl inside the thing can you get into them. I believe myself that it's highly likely that some engineers actually had a ride in this thing.
If this is the end of the line for RTV31, as we know it, it's the saddest demise a legendary and unique piece of this country's transport history can have. RTV31 once stood as a monument, testament to those with the passion, dedication and determination to see Britain at the forefront of engineering. The ones who dared to dream, and dream big, pushing the envelope of what was known in the scientific world. RTV31 was abandoned. Not once, but twice. Did the responsibility of preserving RTV31 extend beyond Railworld?
I reckon overall that we've probably, I know Richard contributed a lot to this, we've probably spent £50,000 saving it, looking after it, hiring pressure washers to clean it, wet and forget to spray on it. We've certainly done our bit.
RTV31's story is approaching its conclusion. But what happened with the Hovertrain project prior to 1975? What was it like in the glory days? To answer those questions, we have to go back to the 1960s.
We were all sort of one big team together.
You were doing something new, it had never been done before.
It's quite an experience.
We were not the most popular of people.
No, I didn't feel optimistic about its chances.
It should have been a success.
It was never meant to last.
Well, I suppose the best way to explain it is to demonstrate it. A linear electric motor is a very simple idea. It's just an ordinary electric motor which has been unrolled.
Looking ahead to the future, we can expect to find hover-rail trains like this, skimming high and fast above cities, linking city centres to airports.
Everybody was for the project and the morale was really high.
Every step we made was a great step of advancement.
The one test run that sticks out in my mind, of course, was 104 mile an hour.